Hello, everyone. Another week, another Saturday. This is Peter.
I'm Gary.
Yeah, we are delighted to bring you this week's news update from the property sector of Australia. And then today we are taking advantage of one of our beautiful display homes, which I welcome you to come in and have a look at it. Next week, we're gonna have this property on the market for 4 weeks, and slowly we're gonna start to introduce a bit more about what we're doing, a bit more about what we're selling, a bit more about what exactly you can get in the market and our recommendations over time. So with no further ado, let's start with the news this week. All right. So the first one would be the large news this week, which
Yep.
is the RBA cuts interest rate again. Oh
Yep.
my God. Which I haven't thought is gonna happen. Yeah, to be honest. And then for that reason, I've actually fixed my home loan a few
Ah,
months back. But from the saving of it, I got compared to variable interest loan. I think I already made my money back anyway. But let's look at how low has gone to right now, and this is what people have been talking about since Tuesday this week. So Australian central bank promise it has not run out of firepower to support the coronavirus hit economy after cutting interest rate to record lows, ensuring the cost of finance remains low for years to come, home buyers and all borrowers. Uh, it has cut the interest rate from 0.25% to now a whopping 0.1%.
well,
0.1% means like
tenth of a percent.
pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
Pretty much equivalent to zero right now. And then the bank still says they haven't running out of firepower. You
Yeah. I'd like to know what the rest of their firepower is, but other than going to negative interest rates, and they've said they won't do that. But we'll see.
Yeah, but regardless, cutting interest rate to a bare minima would definitely help people who want to get into the property market. And this interest rate not only affected the property market, it also affecting the business world because a lot of people can get very low interest uh, loans
Yep.
for their businesses. And I even see the bank start lowering the interest rate for a lot of unsecured business loans, which is really trying to get people back on their feet. Really try to get people back on their feet. Let's have a look at it. What did they do? So basically, they cut the cash rate by 15 basis point from to 0.1% after the morning meeting, and it also went much further than usual. In poker terms, they said the bank is already now all in. They're all in now. Yeah, but after they say they're all in, they still get a lot of firepower left, which
Yeah.
yeah. And I think you made a very good point earlier. It's not just about they make the interest rate to 0.1%. It's about how long they will keep it at this rate or
Yeah,
not
that's the
increasing
important thing.
again.
What
Yeah,
they've said is they're not going to raise it for another 3 to 4 years.
that's right. Yeah,
So that means you can invest in confidence.
that's right.
But the key thing is
Mm,
that's not the rate you can borrow at. You have to go to the bank, but I mean,
That's right.
commercial banks.
yeah,
But it means that you can get a sub, just under
yeah,
2% loan
mm,
fixed
yeah,
for 3 to 4 years. And I think the other thing people should note is that this will not bring down variable loans, is what they think.
mm,
So it's not, if you're on a variable loan, and let's face it, most people are, the only way you can really sort of reduce it is threaten your bank you're going to go elsewhere,
mm,
or indeed go elsewhere.
mm,
But if you go elsewhere, you'll have to go to a fixed rate. But what does that mean? It means that you'll get a lower rate now.
mm,
It means that you won't be able to take advantage of any falls.
mm,
So, like you said, you fixed
mm,
perhaps a little bit early,
mhm,
but nevertheless, let's face it, if you're under 2% for 4 years, say, that's a good deal.
Oh, well, it just means, I think if you can borrow money at 2% interest or sub 2%, you're making money by borrowing money. Well, at least in our world, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
If you're investing it.
That's right. Yeah, because any like we discussed a little bit earlier, the Commonwealth Bank, which is one of the largest banks in Australia, has announced they're gonna offer 1.99% interest rate on a 4 years fixed rate
Right.
plan, starting mid to late this month. And then what that means is, in general, according to CoreLogic, which we're gonna talk about in inflation news article later on, during the CoreLogic research, the average yield for not net yield, gross yield. So gross yield for apartments in Sydney is roughly about 3.3%, where for the houses about 2.2%.
Yeah.
So if you're borrowing money at the interest rate sub 2%, you are making cash flow positive investments on your property if you buy an average property,
Yeah.
because that's the average return, right? But if you're buying just a little bit better, then you can easily get something with a cash flow at a 4% in the market at the moment. That means you almost doubling your money, in terms of the interest rate against
Right.
the yield you're gonna get. So coming back to some details, the RBA packages of measures involved a cut of cash rate target, and then it was from it's a 3 years target, and then a cut from 0.1% to from 0.25% to 0.1%. A reduction in the interest rate on exchange settlement balance has also been set to 0 from 10 basis point, and then the introduction of a program of government bond purchases involving the RBA buying $100 billion worth of government bond over the next 6 months. So that's really, I understand that you're making the point where they also want the government to do a little bit more as well,
Yeah,
but they're doing more.
Yeah, the bank want the government to use its fiscal incentives, etc., to stimulate the economy rather than just relying on credit policy, etc., all the time.
That's right. And then also they promised that the cash rate wouldn't really go up for at least 3 years. And then
I wouldn't say promise was the word they used, but they indicated. They don't
indicated.
expect it to.
Yeah,
And,
indicated.
Neither do any of the market economists either, so I think you're a pretty safe bet there.
Pretty safe bet. And in reality, a lot of economists, a lot of chief executives, and then people from the board of RBA saying in reality, not only it's not going to be increased in 3 years, it could be 5 years or even longer.
Well, I mean, the reality is it's like America, isn't it?
That's right.
They lower their interest rates, and then the trouble is everything depends on the interest rates.
That's
As soon as they try and get their interest rates up,
Yeah,
the stock market crashes,
yeah,
and then they have to reverse it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, they're in a bind. They can't increase at the moment. That's their issue. It's very, very hard.
That's right.
So I can just see us following the same way, where we just don't increase our interest rates, because if we do, the housing market will crash, or the stock market will crash, or whatever it is, and therefore you're set in this problem that you just can't increase anything.
Yeah, but they I think that will be another problem when it happens.
It is.
Yeah, but at least for the next 3 to 5 years, the people that are holding assets are in heaven.
Yeah.
Are in heaven. Yeah. So another thing is, has the RBA used all its firepower? They have additional. What's hard to say. They haven't said what other thing they could do. Only thing they have really said is we have additional monetary policy options, and we're prepared to use them if the circumstances required. And if we need to do more, we can, and we will. So we're probably just gonna be leaving it like that.
Yeah.
All right. So will lenders pass on the rate cuts? Of course. CBA has followed through already,
Yep.
And I expected when Commonwealth Bank follows up on the interest rate cut, the other bank will follow.
Oh, I'm sure they'll all be in there. In fact, most of them probably already have, I think. as
It's
far as I
always
know.
been that shepherd's effect anyway. Once someone lead, other ones will follow.
But as I said, it's only on fixed rates
At the moment, yeah.
at the
it's on
moment.
a
The
fixed
variable rates, they haven't dropped. and the banks find it very hard to drop their variable rates, because if they do, they've got to really knock their depositors out, and of course they need their depositors to leave money with them so that they've got money to loan. So the fixed rates is the one which are coming down at the moment. So, but that's good, you know, as I say, 3 or 4 years,
That's right.
sub 2%. God,
That's right. And then what does the lower risk means for homeowners and buyers? It means, you can now pay less and borrow more.
yeah.
Yeah, you can pay less and borrow more. There we go. You can save a lot of money in the interest as well.
Well, if people say, for instance, got a fixed amount of money they can afford to repay on their mortgage, just for ease of, let's say it's $100, okay? Just obviously going to be more than that, but
That's
let's say $100. What it means is if the interest rate comes down, they've still got their $100, but it means that they can borrow more,
That's right.
and all that's going to do is push upward momentum on house prices.
Yeah. So followed by this is what is the impact on the house market? Well, upwards. They will go upward more, and then not only that, I think not just the prices, but the number of buyers in the market as well. Because from our weekend openings and the way we see it, a lot of people start to jump into the market to buy now. Before there's so many reasons for them to hesitate. Now they hesitate not to get into the market. Before they hesitate to get into the market.
Yep.
And soon after, we start to hear, at least from my perspective, like now I'm going to a bar, I'm going to a function, I'm going to a restaurant, and I can see more and more people next to my table start talking about, I start to see this property, what do you think about it, and all of that. Where before, I hardly hear anything regarding properties in these areas. Well, it just shows the trend of it. It's very similar to when the China market first started to boom, and then we start to have all these properties you can buy, people can trade them freely, because at the very early stage when I was living in China, property is not for trade. They're for just people. Yeah, if you have a job and the company you work for will assign you a property for your family to live in. Now, when it first started, people just went crazy for it, and it looks like I've seen that feeling now as well. But let's take a look like what prices jumps or what big sales has happened this week. Our good old friend, Eastern Suburb, Point Pepper, Vaucluse. I think people who's watching our shows will get irritated by these suburbs already. There just appears on these big sales every single week. But there we go, another one, Point Pepper Home, and sales post auction. The auction did happen, and what's interesting is, if you're a local market and if you go into auction, it's often that the property is sold right after the auction ends. Especially for some high-end properties. But this one, it has attracted a lot of bidders coming over and bid it. And then it just sold really soon after the property passed in. It started at 11 million for this 742 square meter property. Has won award over the years. This one is a north facing. The couple who bought it paid 1.1 million for this property back in 1986, and redesigned it with
Neil Durbach.
Yeah, that's right. One of the best architects, and completed in 2003, and won the Robin Boyle Award a year later. Yeah, Sydney have some really beautiful homes. This home was featured in the book 100 More of the World's Best Houses. So there you go.
Oh, it's stunning, isn't it?
It's beautiful home. Yeah, it's beautiful home. And then looks like Sotheby's is on fire this year. We have multiple auctions that happens, and they appear in multiple articles that we have talked about as well. Open bid is 11.5 million and finished at 13.2. It still got passed in, but sold post auction closer to its undisclosed reserve. Yeah. Eventually, I think we probably will know the price point for this one. Eventually. There we go. Yeah. Is this the one that I remember a couple of weeks back? We actually had an article talk about a property in Point Pepper that price got at 11 million.
Could be.
Could be this one, right? And I would say, let's check in a few weeks later, just see how much it actually sold for. And now it is. Let's go a little bit further. We haven't been talking about a lot of regional or close regional areas of Sydney. Now let's have a look at the a piece of land. So there is no house in here. This is purely a level land. For not that big. It's actually for about 674 square meters. So let's look at this land and how much it sells for.
651.
651,000 for just a piece of land in Montjuic is insane. I'll say it's absolutely crazy prices. And the final sale price was whooping almost more than $100,000 above the reserve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
For just a piece of land. Even though, like the agent said, buy a vacant block in Montjuic was unheard of, but at the end of the day, it was on Montjuic, right? It's not it looks like the housing market just start to, taking off.
taking off
Yeah.
down there, yeah.
Taking off down there. And another auction happened in Epping at number 5 Romsford Road. This was sold for the first time in 57 years. A very old brick house. Starting price ending at 2.09 million after a total of 38 bids was placed and sold $390,000 above reserve. This is Epping, $2 million. It's a common price now in Epping.
Is it?
Oh
Sure.
my God, yeah. I've seen this many times. But Epping is a good area. It's got school, and it's close to Eastwood and Macquarie Park. It's very family styled, and the transportation is really good as well. It's sort of it's got a combination of metro and train.
Yeah.
And it's becoming a hub. Once the second airport is built, that will become like a new hub, just like the old Strathfield, which has also always been on the top, fastest growing areas and all that. This is something that I think we can keep an eye out for. Yeah, so there's another one. Yeah, just amazing prices. Look at this one. This is King Street in Wollstonecraft. So number 3/55 King Street in Wollstonecraft. Paid $100,000 more over the reserve for a 2-bedroom apartment in Wollstonecraft. Interesting. See, now a 2-bedroom apartment in Wollstonecraft and now 1.372 million at the auction. So like what we said before, I remember last week or many weeks we talked about the price point. So you get houses start to really taking off, and once people start to get priced out of many other properties, they will start looking in similar things like townhouse or duplex. And then if they get priced out again, they will come down to properties and like apartments. Now looks like you guys have to move really fast in the apartment market, because soon you probably get priced out of apartment market as well. Now a 2-bedroom apartment in Wollstonecraft is 1.372 million, and it doesn't seem to be that new of apartment either. Look at the very old sort of brick apartment with a fan.
Right, so I think we discussed this area like Waverton a few weeks ago. They're very similar, right next to each other.
That's right.
And basically there aren't many new ones in this area.
Yeah.
So what you're buying, almost by definition, you're buying the existing stock, and they're pretty old,
That's right.
But some very nice apartments there. It's a nice area. A lot of it overlooks the inner harbour.
Yep.
So it's very, very close to North Sydney.
Mhm.
It's got a rail line down to the city.
Mhm.
So very nice.
Mm. And then we had these 14 bidders had a crack at 11 High Street, Cronulla.
I think
Yeah, so the family offered for the first time in 40 years near the beach at Cronulla has sold for $1.97 million. It's a 3 bedroom. It's just a 3 bedroom house. It's not even that big of a house, you know. And it was traded for $270,000 above the reserve in Cronulla.
Cronulla.
Yeah, Cronulla.
Oh, well,
Wow. Okay.
you know.
There was 54 open at 1.6 million. And
54 bids.
yeah, and they're at 1.97 million, 54 bids traded.
Yep. That wouldn't have water views, that one, but in the high street. But nevertheless, it's.
Hmm.
But you know, as I said to you the other day, that just about all houses on the North Shore
Yep,
of reasonable distance to the beach are all
Yep.
$2 million.
that's right.
So, Cronulla's very equivalent to that. So
Mm.
you'd expect that.
So let's take another look. Sydney auctions, Eastern Suburbs couple pays for 2.475 million at auction for deceased.
Another Bondi gem.
Another Bondi gem. Looks like the Eastern Suburbs, North Shore, constantly making prices records, constantly making surprises for a lot of people. This one is a house that has not been sold outside the family for 80 years. So it's been a property that's been keep passing on between the families for 80 years. Originally paid for 375,000. Oh, sorry.
No,
This one
won't be
was
that much. 80 years ago.
375,000 above the reserve. Owner had it within the family for 80 years. It's a cul-de-sac, attracts a huge crowd. 70 people watched it.
It probably needs a lot of work done.
A lot. I'll say a lot.
Good for them.
Yeah. So there we go. Reserve price was 2.1. B start, there are 6 parties that's actually active during this auction, and then increment was between 3,000 to 40,000. Finally, it was sold to a local buyer.
Okay.
So it seems like the local buyers are now in Bondi, and then the Australian Chinese buyers are really focusing and putting it onto the eastern suburbs, like the rest of it,
Yeah.
like Vaucluse, Point Pepper, and the other areas.
It just looks like a good family house, doesn't it?
Yeah, simple, simple.
Yeah, simple family
Yeah,
house.
inside is, you can see the age of it. It really shows the age of it. There you go, that's the auction. That's the number of people attended. So this is still a sign of Sydney market. Doesn't matter people be hesitating, people be worrying and all that. This is just a snapshot of the Saturday, for real estate in Sydney. The Bondi sale was one of the 885 Sydney auctions scheduled for the weekend. Yeah, so there's almost 900 auctions scheduled for the weekend, and 26 fewer than the number recorded last weekend. Which means, if you have almost 900 property scheduled for auction, the way that majority of the agent works is that if there's not much interest in a particular property, the auction wouldn't really be scheduled. So if these are scheduled, that means, people are really going for it.
Yeah. No, I mean, as we said in the last couple of months, the market is buoyant.
Yep.
I don't see it, as I said, it's going to go on till Christmas.
Yep.
We'll have to see what happens after Christmas.
Yeah. We're trying to rush a few properties into the market just before Christmas as well, and we'll share the result with everyone once we start to get some. All right. Jump in price filtered searches reveals new home buyer desires. So one of the major impacts of COVID-19 recession has been that people has been extremely restricted in the ways they can spend their money.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and then we're gonna use a couple of data just to quickly go through and wrap up, information on what people has been searching online recently during the COVID time, using September 2020 as a sample compared to September 2019.
All right.
Yeah. So let's have a look. A jump in filter searches reveals new buyer behaviors. So one of the best website in Australia to look at property would be definitely realestate.com.au. And then in the realestate.com.au, there has been a lot of research done recently regarding how people doing their searches. Number one is a higher proportion of searches at a lower price point, which I think definitely makes sense. Fewer and fewer people are sitting on their feet, where more and more people are starting to jump into the market, try to get the properties. And then when you first jump in the market, definitely you're going to start with something at a slightly lower prices, unless you have rich and fortunes in these suburbs. That's a different story. But for majority of people, when they first start jumping in the market, they start to look at the proportion of searches for lower price point. I think this has happened due to the increased number of first home buyers who are in the market, and also investors slowly coming back after comparing the interest rate and the yield. If you're getting 5% yield and only pay 2% interest, go for it by any means, right? Number two, searches for properties over 1 million have increased. Not by a lot, but it have been increased. More searches over 1 million in capital cities than regions. Still, I think majority of people will still be looking at capital cities, but the regional areas are really start to boom by many different reasons. I think you had a very good theory about that as well.
Well, yeah, I think people, they want to look at getting out of the cities at the moment. Now they've discovered they can all work on Zoom, and that's a natural reaction with something like COVID floating around. But funnily enough, I would expect in the next 4 to 5 years that areas outside of the CBDs would grow quite well. That's historically what's always happened on the second parts of a property cycle. The areas outside of the main engine rooms, which is like places like the centre of Sydney, centre of Melbourne, have grown more, whereas in the first part, that's where the engine is, that's where it really grows. But as I was saying, that it depends on I think how long that keeps going. I think we'll keep going until such time as the prices go up.
That's right.
And the problem that will then happen is that you'll find that there'll be a problem in those regional areas where a lot of the locals are priced out of the market.
That's right.
Which is exactly what happened in Byron Bay.
Yep.
It's been a major issue up there for a long time. It's
Yep.
happened in places like Kiama, down on the south coast.
Yep.
Certainly where I come from in the UK, it's a big issue down in the southwest, where a lot of people from London come down, buy a holiday house, and of course the prices just pump up. Retirees come down as well, and they just pump up and take out the local younger people coming through. So anyway, there we go. That's what's going to happen. And we discussed earlier on a couple I know have just done exactly the same. Moved up to the Hunter from Sydney. So it's going to happen. It happens all the time. I think with COVID, it's just got a good kick along. That's all.
That's right. And the first thing is shift in searches over 1 million greater in regional markets, which just exactly like what you said.
Well, the other thing is, of course, typically the people who move out of places like Sydney and Melbourne, they go to Brisbane and Queensland, and that's not open to them really at the moment.
No.
There is some happening apparently, I read, but how they do it I don't know with the border controls, and certainly you can't go and see it either. So I think therefore people who wanted to get out and move out because of price point
That's right.
I've really had to move. Look at, say, New South Wales if they live in New South Wales and Sydney.
Hmm.
So,
That's right. And number 5, fewer searches over $1 million in Melbourne, but regional Victoria jumped.
that's
Like what I said, yeah, that's what we expect. Melbourne will probably take a while to come back. Short while, maybe between 3 to 6 months. Long while, maybe 2 to 3 years. We'll see how it goes. Melbourne market has been always a little bit weaker compared to the Sydney market. I mean, in the local sense of it, but looks like the regional Melbourne are still taking off quite well.
regional Victoria, yeah.
Oh, sorry, regional Victoria. Number 6, searches for $1 million property across New South Wales more prevalent. Yeah,
Prevalent.
prevalent.
There's more of them.
That's right. That's right. There's more of them. So what does these researchers tells us? I think this, like I said, this has been plenty of talks about the fact that working from home will affect the way that people live, even though, and it's gonna try to get people to move a little bit further down or further away from the capital cities, and then with the constantly infrastructure being built in New South Wales and Victoria, people feel distance become less of an issue, where the internet speed and the sense of space is now the more important issue. So, in this search behavior, it doesn't really prove or disprove this theory, but it looks like, there's more considerations in looking at regional areas in terms of the searches. And when there's a price filter searches, there are still twice as many capital city searches compared to the regional. However, the volume of the number of people look at the capital cities has grown by 23%, where compared to the year before, where regional areas has increased by 46%. Yeah, but the 46% increase is a big
Increase, yeah.
Is a big increase.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
during the 90s, we had the dot-com boom and the internet came in and people started to have emails, etc., flying around.
Mm-hmm.
And we all thought then that people would move out.
Yep.
And, I mean, rather than the daily commute in Sydney, it'd be nicer to live on a farm and
That's right.
commute into Sydney once a week.
Mm-hmm.
But it never really happened in a great way.
Mm.
Technology, size of files, all that kind of thing you can attach, and the internet
Yep.
quality in the rural areas has kept it down. But the other thing is, I think it was culture. People weren't ready for it. There wasn't the bosses certainly weren't ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I think I said last week, you talk to some of the American executives, and whereas before they wanted all their staff in, make sure they could keep their eye on them, know what they were doing, and now all of a sudden they've been forced to have them working at home, and now they've suddenly realised that productivity hasn't gone down, often it's gone up.
Yep.
They're thinking, well, why? Why would I want them here? So, be interesting to see how long that goes for, as to whether, and it's a big issue for the inner cities though. If that happens, I mean, it means a drastic reduction in office space.
Mm-hmm.
And if that happens, then we'll start seeing more office blocks turned into residential, I would imagine. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yep. That's
My view is things will go back towards normal, never go back to normal, but we'll go back.
Close to normal.
I can just see people going to the cities, or having to come to work 2 days a week instead of 5. So it means that still that companies can reduce their office component, especially with things like hot desking these days. But people want, some people yearn to be part of an entity, to actually have that sort of interaction with their colleagues. 2 days a week is probably enough for that. Builds up the corporate culture, but it will mean that there's a reduction in office requirements.
That's right.
My son, for instance, my eldest son anyway, he works for a big real estate agency, and they've all gone back, but he still works from home. when he's allowed to, and he finds he can do more. He can focus more. Doesn't have to say hello to people.
Oh, that's
other
cool.
than his clients. But yeah, he finds he's more productive working from home. He goes in the odd day if he's got meetings and things, but basically he stays. And he even bought himself a little Lambretta, the other day, so he can whiz around to his appointments.
Commercial does have a different culture. When I was working in the same company as your son, I was never allowed to work from home.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't. In the old days, they wouldn't. He used to go in every day.
Yeah.
He left the house at 5:45 every
Yeah,
morning.
yeah,
Bang.
yeah, that's about right.
But now, he found he's more productive actually working from home. So that's what he does.
Okay. Last one, Sydney property prices rises in October, not as significant as due to inflation. This is from Daily Telegraph. We actually had a little bit different opinion. We actually had a little bit different opinion for this one. About the inflation thing. Inflation is a very popular word this year, and the reason why it's very popular is simply because a lot of people print a lot of money, And then originally, my main topic this week is really about inflation and U.S. election, and looks like, President Trump is gonna sue his way out of the thing, and unfortunately, at the moment, we still haven't really reached the final result yet, so we can't really talk about that. But let's talk about inflation and interest rate anyway, just to go from here. It says the house value up by 0.5% to a $993,000 median, although apartment fell 0.5% to a $735,000 median, and this is Sydney market. And then they've been talking about there's an emerging overall 0.1% rate of Sydney capital gain. And then some inflation happens and took the capital gain away from the buyers, which we really think it's not really a time to look at inflation against capital gain just as yet. Yeah.
They're talking about quarters inflation. Well, inflation on a quarterly basis goes up and down like a yo-yo. So
That's right. That's right.
it's not something. It's like saying, well, prices did go up in the last 3 months, which they did, obviously in certain areas. But basically, you've got to look at year-on increases or longer-term increases. Everything evens out. You can't just talk about one quarter.
That's right.
They have, but it's meaningless, is what I'm trying
It's
to say.
meaningless. That's right. In the long run, what I like about this article is CoreLogic also look at the overall extended time. Conclude growth in value across Sydney, Australia has broadly outpaced the inflation, creating real yield returns for owners over 10 years, 28 years period. And I think this is justified. This is very justified. The 10 years real returns for Sydney with 33% and 76% over the past 2 decades. The normal return was a higher 60% over the past decade and 181% over the 2 decades. There you go. Not a bad deal, right? Yeah. Sydney was the best performing capital cities over decades, with Hobart 70%, the next best, and Melbourne 14%. Over the past 20 years, Melbourne, Hobart, and Canberra came out ahead of Sydney. It's just because the base prices in these areas are really low. So for the same amount of money of growth, you'll be looking at a higher return. And then we talked about this before as well. In general, correct me, I said 2.2 for houses, actually 2.7% for houses and 3.3% for apartments. Yeah, but now with the interest rate,
yields.
That's the yield. That's the
Gross yield.
gross yield. So you need to take your land tax, your STRAT levies, your water council rates out.
Rates,
You need to take this out before you calculate it again. But at the end of the day, this yield was calculated based on the 100% value of your property, where in general you're only paying 2% interest or 2.5% interest on 80% of the purchase price.
because you've got your equity in there.
That's right, because you got your equity in. So at the end of the day, looks like the property market is still very positive cash flow market, and it's not really a bad deal to get into it at the moment. We talk about this as well. House prices has been booming. However, now is a really good time to pick a few bargains in the apartment market in a good area. We're talking about areas like far west. Maybe it's not there, not ready yet, but like in the CBD market, surrounding areas.
Well, I was saying to my daughter earlier today, at the moment, if you can buy a good apartment in the centre of Sydney, it's a good time to buy.
It's a good time to buy.
But you've got to, especially if you've actually got a job and it's for your own occupation, that's good, because you buy it at a low price. I just can't see them keep on going down in the centre of the Sydney. We find it's level, and then in the future, I'm absolutely sure it'll zoom back up. And if I was a young person, this is where I'd want to live. As I was walking here today, the buzz on the streets is great. You go down any other suburb, it hasn't got it. So if you're young, that's what you want. So it's if you were investing, then you just got to do your numbers right.
Yeah.
But you will do well in a couple of years' time when the rents bounce back. But until we get the borders opened, and I mean the international borders, we're going to be under pressure. And until people get back to normal post-COVID, work-wise, etc., this area is under pressure. But what a good time if you work in the city, or you can even commute elsewhere from the city.
Yep.
To get in and buy somewhere where you know it's going to appreciate. That's where I'm coming from, and that's what I was saying to my daughter. That's the thing she should be looking at. If I was her age still, that's what I'd be doing.
All right. So this week we're gonna add a little bit of Gary time as well.
Cool.
So why don't we start with the our Gary Silk exclusive time? It looks like we have something to share. Last week we had a good result of sharing the some of the things you want to talk about, like the education in China, your perspective on a lot of the things, and then this week let's see if we want to talk about something else.
Right.
All right. So all
We've got
yours.
a technician crawling around the floor next to us.
A beautiful one as well.
Oh, right, okay. Hi. I was just going to say there's a few things. A couple of weeks ago I said I'd look at negative interest rates and see what I could find. I couldn't find a lot, but I will be able to find more because UK have now gone to negative interest rates, I'm told.
Yep.
So I've got plenty of friends in the UK. What I did do is I looked at Denmark was the first place which seems to have produced negative interest rates as far as mortgages are concerned. And that was only a year ago. It was in August 2019. But certainly Denmark got hit just like everywhere else in March of this year with COVID, and property prices, just like here, they dropped. But they've bounced, and they've bounced higher than ever. So what it would suggest at the moment is that, although it may only be a limited sample of negative mortgages don't kill the property market as far as we can tell. But I'll find some more out. Certainly once the UK gets going, we'll be able to see far more evidence from there. I suppose the big thing I'll be saying is that looking at crystal ball as to where we're going to go, I don't see, certainly in Sydney, there's going to be mass house price deflation. There was an article in the ABC yesterday talking about, are we going to go back down to 40% down? And I think everybody realises now we're not going to. The real issue is, we'll probably, as I've always said, I think we're going to plateau a bit next year.
Yep.
And the reason for that is that the one big thing that affects this country is we have a lot of immigration, and we go negative, forecast negative. We obviously had negative immigration this year, with a lot of people, students and foreign people who are living here have returned home during
That's
COVID,
right.
just like Australians have come back. But nevertheless, we've gone negative. And next year we're going to go negative. And what surprised me when I was reading is that they're still forecasting, excuse me, the negative the year after, which I find that, so one of the things I think the government, if I were in government, so to speak, vote for me, is I'd be trying to see what I could do to attract the right type of employees to come here in a couple of years once we get the borders reopened. And as I was saying, I can see certainly in places like Europe and America, people are really fed up the way that their governments have dealt with COVID.
Yep.
And they would love to get out to Australia. And I think there's a good chance we could attract them in if you know, if they're the type and had the right skills that we wanted.
That's right.
So it means probably we've got to actually go out and push that, you know, as a policy. So we've had about 150,000 people coming in every year, and that's going to drop down to about 80 next year, I think it is, or the year after rather. Sorry. So we're going to be down. You know, we need to get them back in to get our construction going. Bear in mind that such a large portion of our economy is based on construction. So, you know, it's the usual thing. It's like you know, you're quoting the AMP guy. What's his name? Dr.
Oh, you mean the
Shane Oliver? Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
Shane Oliver.
He,
Yeah,
he's joked.
chief economy.
Yeah, chief economist at AMP Capital. Shane's joked that if you're an immigrant here, you should be told that, you know, you've got the golden passport because you now come to a country where the property prices never go down, because basically because it's such a large proportion of our economy. As I've said the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've said the government always comes up with a policy like they did in the budgets.
Yep.
To make sure that they look after the property industry, because otherwise, you know, if that starts to go, that's a major issue in terms of the economy as a whole. What it means as well, of course, is that we've got to branch out into other things to try and get off that reliance on the property market. We obviously have mining, we have agriculture, etc. We've lost our manufacturing, and that's probably, we've got to find some fields where we can get back into things to remove that reliance. So, but I don't think we're going to have mass downturns. You know, the two issues that you're going to look at, one is immigration, if there is any immigration. The other one is unemployment, where people start defaulting on their mortgages, etc., or they can't. They're the two issues, and we'll have to see what happens with unemployment. I think we will get unemployment, you know, but we don't know because everyone's on all these schemes at the moment. But once they all abate and we get back, we'll probably get unemployment. We'll get some companies go under, but I don't think we're going to have anything like mass 10, 20%, 10% drop at most. I always said two things I always, one is the house price movements depend on two things. How much can you borrow? And that depends on interest rates and a whole load of things.
That's right.
And how secure do you feel in your job?
That's right.
Or you know, what is? They're the two things that make people, you know, as long as people do that, they'll always go for the maximum, and that's what drives house prices. And in terms of recessions, normally a recession you only expect 10% drop.
Yep.
Certainly in somewhere like Sydney.
Yep.
And you know, very often, you know, you'll get 10% drop overall at Sydney, say.
Yep. Yep.
but you get rises else one place
Mm-hmm.
and drops of more on the fringes.
Mm.
So I don't want to say any more today. I think I'm going to prepare a few graphs that people can look at. This week, I've mostly focused on the US election. What's been happening over there? It's been,
We will talk about that next week. I'm
it's
pretty
been
sure.
so fun.
I'm pretty sure next week we're gonna have the result one way or the other.
Yeah, they reckon they'll probably get the result early part of next week.
Yeah, early part next week,
And
that's-
then the lawyers will start.
and or it's already starting. And in
Yeah.
2 states, the claim has already been rejected, but we'll see what he will play in the next round, right?
Yeah, I mean-
he's a man of very interesting plans and always have an answer to everything. So we'll see how it goes next week.
But look, I mean, at the end of the day, the one thing the Americans have got is they've got this system that the new president doesn't really take control until January.
That's right.
So they've got a lot of time to let all this kind of thing play out.
Yeah, that's right.
It looks pretty obvious to me that he's lost. I could be wrong, maybe a last swing in the counts, but it
Yep.
looks pretty obvious the trends he's lost. And I think what we're seeing is a person who can't believe he's lost and has got to come to terms with it, and hopefully then do the right thing and have a swift and proper transfer over to the new mob.
We'll see about that. All right. Thank you so much for being here, and it's so nice to see everyone again. Tuning in, we're having this new YouTube channel that we're gonna start to constantly, weekly uploading, information regarding Australian property news and talk about a few options and opinions that we have regarding the market or current affairs. And I'm Peter.
I'm Gary.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Okay.
All right.
Cheers. Have a good
Cheers.
week.
You too. Bye.